There will in fact be more from the UK Dance Championships on Thursday evening at the same time, 10:50. And Simon Betts, the producer of the United Kingdom Dance Championships, will be appearing on Open Air on Thursday morning. If you have any questions or comments for him, please ring 061 814 0424 and the lines are open now. This is BBC One. Now here's Margot MacDonald with the first of a two-part advice shop guide to the DHSS benefits changes which come into effect next week.
Social Security shake-up since the war. The government says it's more help for families. Low-wage families extra benefit, but no free school meals. Families in Sup Bend to get loans instead of single payments. A third of single parents to lose out. And everyone, no matter what their income, liable to pay 20% of their general rates and all of their water rates. Hello. Well, that was just a sample of the sort of headlines that we'll be hearing on April the 11th. Because on that day, everyone on supplementary benefit, housing benefit or family income supplement will face a brand new benefit system. So in this and the next Advice Shop programme, we'll do our best to explain how the shake-up will affect various groups of people. In our next programme, we'll consider young people, pensioners, disabled people and single parents. And just in case you're wondering why this programme has John Lee signing away over there, as well as subtitles, then I should explain. There are, of course, a lot of deaf people who need to know all about the benefits shake-up and who rely on signing because it's their main language. Now, in this programme, we'll be mainly concerned with the effects on families with young children. And as we said right at the start of the programme, it's this group that is supposed to benefit most from the changes. But is this really going to happen? Well, later on, I'll talk to Mr. and Mrs. Hayden and their family, and we'll just see whether or not they'll be any better off as a result of the changeover from family income supplement to family credit. And Sally Robertson from the Disability Alliance is here to guide us through the changes. So, we'll just get started. And here's change number 1. And that affects everyone who's in supplementary benefit. Changes! That's right, supplementary benefit is out, and from April the 11th in its place we'll have income support. Weekly additions for people with special needs such as extra heating, special diet and laundry will be scrapped, as will the long-term rate of benefit, and they'll both be replaced by a system of personal allowances plus premiums for families, single parents, disabled people and pensioners. And don't be put off by this word premium. It just means the amount of money the DHSS pays you. These premiums are supposed to compensate people on income support for the loss of weekly additions and the long-term rate of benefits which they had under supplementary benefit. Now, the good news about income support is that you'll be able to claim it if you have less than £6,000 in savings, compared with the £3,000 that you're allowed to have under the supplementary benefit scheme. But everyone will have to pay 20% of their general rates and all of their water rates. And if you think that's a bit of an upheaval, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, because housing benefit, which is the help you get with rent and rates, that's going to change too. Changes. Probably more people will be affected by changes to housing benefit than by any of the other changes. The name stays the same, but you won't be able to claim housing benefit if your savings are over £6,000. People with savings between £3,000 and £6,000 will get less benefit. And I'll discuss this in more detail with Sally Robertson when she joins me in just a minute. But first of all, let's see how all these changes affect families in supplementary benefit. The family we're going to meet lives in Muirhouse, an Edinburgh Council housing scheme. Unemployment in this area is very high, and the Ireson family are no strangers to life in the dole. Kenny and Mags, with their 2 boys, Richard and Christopher, have to struggle to make ends meet.
My benefit is made up of a standard amount for myself and my wife. I get money for my 2 children, one who's under 4, a bit more for the one who's 13, and a weekly addition of £2.20 for heating. As I'm in receipt of supplementary benefit, I can qualify for housing benefit, and my rent and rates charge is nil. I'm just off to cash my gyro, which is £104 for the fortnight, and off this I'm to buy food and clothes for the family and meet any other costs over that time. I have £20 deducted from my gyro at source, and that covers fuel bills. My gyro is maybe lasting me through 1 week, and when I get into my 2nd week waiting for the next gyro to arrive, things are very tight. When we have to spend money on food, and then we have extras like bus fares for the kids to school, pocket money, and paying for TV rental, you find that there isn't anything left as you're coming up to receiving your next gyro. Money is all gone. I've just been in to sign on for my unemployment benefits, and I've been given this leaflet explaining how the benefits are going to change on April the 11th and how it's going to affect me. Should make interesting reading. I've sat and worked out my figures, the money I'm receiving on supplementary benefit at the present. Now I'm going to sit and work out what I'll be receiving under income support in April. I see that my basic allowance for myself and my wife is staying much about the same, and that the allowance for my children is also much about the same. But looking at this, that we're going to lose the additions. Now, those are going to be replaced with something called the premiums. I will actually qualify for the family premium, but the families that I know that are receiving 2 or 3 or 4 weekly additions are going to be worse off. They are claiming for substantial weekly additions of laundries, baths, wear and tear, heating, diet. They are going to lose out on those. They will only get the basic premium, the family premium, and that will not be enough to cover their weekly additions, which were quite large at the time. I've been receiving housing benefit, and I haven't had to pay anything myself for rent and rates. But from April, I'm going to have to pay 20% of my rates and an extra £1.50 a week for water rates. My rates are going to be £3 per week extra. Those both, the £4.50 is going to have to come out of my gyro. I'm going to have to make that payment myself, which is going to be very hard to do. So having looked at the income support, I'm not going to be any better off with the extra they're giving me. It's not going to be enough to cover the rise in rates and water rates.
So if Kenny Ireson's figures are correct, his family is unlikely to be better off from week to week under the new system. Sally, it was confusing enough before, and I imagine that people are going to be even more confused now. But can we start off with Kenny Ireson and his family that we saw there in the film? Are they fairly typical?
Not as typical as I'd like. Kenny at least knows roughly what he's entitled to, and is making sure before the changeover that he's getting everything which he should be under supplementary benefit.
But the whole idea of this policy, as far as the government was concerned, was to channel money towards poor families. But Kenny says that he reckons he's going to be worse off.
Yep. Well, the new income support scheme, all these changes the government are doing, they're really geared towards the needs of the computer, of bureaucrats, rather than the needs of individuals. And of course, people don't come neatly packaged.
No.
And Kenny isn't a neatly packaged person. His family isn't neatly packaged. That's why he's losing.
If it was because he was unemployed instead of being a low-wage earner. I thought that he, you know, as someone who was on sup-ben because he was unemployed, I thought perhaps that's the group of people who are going to lose out a bit.
No. Kenny looks to be going to be losing under the new scheme, mainly because he's getting extra weekly payments with his supplementary benefit, the heating addition, possibly a laundry addition.
But I thought that these premiums were meant to cover that.
Well, they don't. They're just a flat rate that just, you know, it's a sort of a random approach to targeting help. Some people get more than they need, other people get less than they need, and generally it's sort of a reshuffling of poverty.
Oh, you're cheering me up no end. Right, Kenny's married, so there's 2 parents, 2 children in the family. What about single-parent families?
Under the new system, around about 1/3 of single parents will lose out, will get less than they could have got under the supplementary benefit and housing benefit and family income supplement schemes.
Right, so that's Kenny's family is going to lose out a bit. Single parents, 1/3 of them, 2/3 of them, are they going to be better off?
About just over half of them will be better off under the new scheme.
Right, now we mentioned housing benefits changing. Can you explain what's going to change about housing benefit?
The new way of working housing benefit out is simpler, but the side effect is that fewer people will get help.
Is this because the ceiling has been raised, so that if you've got anything in the bank up to £6,000, you're not going to get anything up to 3,000, you get it all, is that right?
Anything up to 3,000, those savings don't affect housing benefit.
Between 3,000 and 6,000?
They assume a weekly income from that money. So if you have, say, £6,000 savings, they assume £12 a week income.
So what advice would you give to people who have a bit in the bank, somewhere between £3,000 and £6,000, and then people with money over £6,000?
I think the general advice is, as long as you spend your savings sensibly and reasonably, you'll be okay. But it is best to get advice. I mean, if you've been planning on redecorating the living room for some time, do it now. But don't go out and buy, you know, Mum a sort of a Rolls Royce.
Right, Sally, don't go away, because we'll be back. But now, the next big change. It's the social fund that's proving to be the most controversial part of the new system. It replaces single payments for people in supplementary benefit. Under the present system, supplementary benefit claimants can get lump sum single payments for large items which they can't afford from their weekly benefit. These payments are for things like clothing, bedding, furniture, cookers and so on. Now, under the new social fund, people will have to apply to the social fund officer, and it will be up to him to decide whether a payment should or should not be made. In most cases, payments will be in the form of loans, which will have to be paid back out of weekly benefit. There will be no right of appeal if the request for a payment is turned down, and the budget for payments will be limited, which means that local offices could run out of money halfway through the year. To find out what it's going to be like to get a payment from the social fund for something like a cooker, we sent our reporter Dilly Bramer to Nottingham.
Good morning, just after 8 o'clock on Monday, April the 11th, a rather cold day around the county. It's Richard Dodd on Radio Nottingham, and here's some music to get us going.
Come on. Ah! It's not working. Well, there goes my breakfast. This thing's been on the blink for ages, and at last it's given up the ghost. But I do know that for those people that are on supplementary benefit, there is such a thing as a single payment for things like cookers and furniture and clothing. So I think the best thing that I can do is go down to the social and see if I'm eligible for one as well.
The big news story this morning is the Social Security Act, which comes into force today, and one of the big changes taking place is that
Single payments for people on supplementary benefit are abolished.
and replaced by the Social Fund.
A social what?
Well, listen, from now on you have to apply to the Social Fund for things like cookers and furniture. In most cases, payment will be in the form of a loan.
If you want to know more, we've got a live phone in now, so
Ring us on Nottingham 34343.
right, we're ready to take calls about the social fund, and in the studio with me to answer your questions is Ian Hillier from Nottinghamshire Welfare Rights. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning, Richard.
Okay, we've got our first caller. It's Dilly Bramer, who's in Nottingham. Dilly, you're through to Ian.
Thank you. Ian?
Good morning, Dilly.
Hello. I've heard a bit about this social fund. I don't really understand it.
I'm on supplementary benefit and my cooker broke down this morning. Do I get a new one?
Right, well, the problem is that the social fund has replaced the old single payment system. So the old grants have been abolished, and instead we have the social fund. Now, the sort of thing you'd end up applying for will be a budgeting loan, and the drawback with that is it'll be recoverable from your weekly benefit.
The thing is, all I'm interested in is, do I get something to cook my food on? Because I've got nothing.
Right, well, the easiest way to sort of explain it is that it's a little bit like a series of hurdles, and you've got to get over these hurdles, and if you do, and you get to the end, then you may well get the loan. First hurdle, if you've been on for more than 26 weeks, either income support, as it's now called, or supplementary benefit, then you're over that first hurdle.
OK, calm down, Dilly. You've made the first one. That's the easy one. The next one, you've got to have less than £500 savings. Yeah, good one, Dilly. OK, Dilly, this one's not too much of a problem either. All you've got to make sure is that the item you need costs more than £30.
That's another one. More than £30, what I think cookers cost. Peanut?
Right, this one's going to be a little bit more difficult, but you should be able to do it. It's got to be a reasonable request that you're making, so you should be able to do it. Now, come on. Right, you've just got 2 left. Now, you should be able to do this. You've got to really try hard. It's high priority. Well, I would say cooker's a high priority. Now, really go for it this time. Just 1 left now. Just 1 left. Fairly straightforward. Might have a bit of difficulty. You've got to be able to prove that you can afford to repay this loan. Might have a bit of problem, might be a bit dodgy. You've got to really go for this one.
Oh, no. Hey, don't worry, Dilly. God, I haven't cleared that hurdle. What do I do now?
Right, sorry about that, Dilly. They don't feel that you can afford to repay the loan. But there is something else we can try. There's a charity called Family First, and they might be able to help you.
That's right. We have a community programme worker who checks them out and does his best to get them working.
Now, Robin, it appears to me that you've got loads of cookers here. Would you be able to help me out if I was a claimant?
A year ago, we'd probably have said yes. 6 months ago, things were beginning to get difficult. But now, as you can see, everyone we've got is already allocated.
So what's going to happen when the social fund really gets going?
It's just going to get worse and worse. For as many cookers as we get in, there's going to be far more people needing them than we're able to help. We help about 150 people a month at present, and we don't get anything like that amount of cookers that we can work on.
If I was really on supplementary benefit, or income support as it's now called, I wouldn't have been eligible for a payment from the social fund. I wouldn't have been able to get anything from the local charities because they would have been swamped with people in my position. So what are people going to do? I bet some of them wish that this bloke was still around to help them out.
Robin Hood, riding through the glen. Robin Hood.
Sally, these hurdles that Dilly went over, very amusing, but is that true? Will people have to do that sort of thing?
To get that certain type of loans, yes, they'll have to go through those hurdles, with one extra at the end, which is if the local office is up to the limit of its budget, it can't make a loan, it can't make a grant. That's the final hurdle. Does the office have enough money left in the kitty to pay you?
Right, since people don't have any control over that themselves, let's look at what they're going to have control over if they have to apply for a loan from the social fund. They've got to fill up a form. I've seen the form, it's quite complicated. There's lots of pages in it, as far as I can remember.
There's lots of questions. Most people won't need to ask all of them. And I think the best bit of advice is that you should go along and get help from an advice agency. Get someone who understands the social fund to help you fill the form in.
Now, what happens if you go in to see the social fund officer and you are turned down flat? Either he's got no money left in the kitty, or else, like Dilly Bremer, you've got so many other debts that he says, well, you can't repay this, so I'm not going to give you it.
There's no independent right of appeal, but you can ask another social fund officer to review that first social fund officer's decision. You've got a right to ask for a review. It's all done within the DHSS, another civil servant looking at what the first civil servant did.
Sally, thank you. Well, what about the realities for families in the new social fund? Well, let's go back to Kenny and his family and see how they'd get on if they needed a new cooker.
If I was to receive a loan from the social fund, it would be very hard also to make repayments to them for covering a loan for a gas cooker, £150. The repayments would have to be very small after paying my extra for my water rates and my renting rates. I don't think I would be able to pay back a loan. It would be very hard to make ends meet.
Well, right now, Kenny is unemployed, but what happens if he manages to get a job? You can take it from me that round about the area he lives in, there aren't all that many highly paid jobs. So, what happens if someone in the same position as Kenny Ireson becomes a low-paid worker? After April, Family Income Supplement, the main benefit for families in low wages, is going to be called Family Credit. And the government claims that it'll be a much better deal. The main changes are that it will now be awarded for 26 weeks instead of 52. And there will be a £6,000 savings limit. In other words, if you have more than £6,000 in savings, say goodbye to Family Credit. And a major change for people getting Family Credit is that they will no longer be eligible for free school meals, free vitamins and free milk. Well, I've been joined in the studio now by some people who might be interested in the free school meals bit. Kathy and Martin Hayden and their 3 daughters, Lisa, Jessica and Paula, live just outside Nottingham. And Martin works full-time as an electrical wholesaler. Now, your family, Martin, is changing from Fizz to Family Credit.
That's correct, yeah.
And you're changing from getting £3 odds a week in Fizz to £19 odds a week in Family Credit. Isn't this terrific?
That's the way it looks originally, yeah. It looks great. But when things are worked out, you find out that it's not as straightforward as it seems. At present, we are getting rent and rate rebates. And obviously, Family Credit has to be included when they calculate that. And so we assume that will go down to the tune of about £6 to £7 a week. And also including, we've now got to pay, I think, the 20% of our first rates anyway, which aren't liable to a rebate under the new system.
That's right, you'll have to pay the 20%,
yeah.
Definitely, at least.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, I think, Kathy, will you not have more money in your hand each week under the Family Credit system?
Yes, I will, but for instance, they get free school dinners now, the children, and if I have to pay for that, that's over £10, so that's £10 of my money gone, and various things like that, and it's soon gone.
Paula, do you go for school dinners?
Yes, I will be, yes.
Do you like them?
Yeah.
Well, I think you'll just need to keep on buying the school dinners, Kathy.
I like them to have a hot meal anyway, so... But I think that perhaps some children might not get the free dinners if the parents have actually got the money, and then they can decide whether they have the school meals or not. I think perhaps some children might lose out there.
Well, I think that women who have very little money in their purse at the end of the week, I mean, you can quite understand how that's going to happen.
Yeah.
How did you find out about this Family Credit, though?
There's very little information that I've seen sort of readily available in the press, or or so far has been on television.
But didn't you get some sort of letter or something, Kathy, telling you about it?
We got a letter when we actually received the Family Credit book, and it told us how they'd worked out our £19, how they'd got to that amount. But to be quite honest, I couldn't understand it.
Which language is it written in, Martin?
In pure gobbledygook, I think. It didn't make sense, and really, to me, it didn't explain what you were entitled to and what entitlements you would be losing.
Right. Thank you very much indeed for coming and joining us. And I hope when you go to school, Jessica, that you sit up straighter than that. Right. Sally, neither Martin nor Kathy has a degree in double Dutch, so they found this letter that accompanied the new book quite difficult to understand. What should people do?
If they don't understand it, they should ask for an explanation, either from Freeline Social Security or from a local advice agency. Basically, if you get anything from the DHSS that you can't understand, go back, get it translated.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't understand. The government said that all these changes in the benefits were to gear help towards low-paid families. And yet it would appear as though the Haydens aren't going to be all that much better off.
The Haydens are one of the third of working families with children who'll be worse off under the new system. I mean, the government's approach to targeting help is sort of a random affair. It's as if someone was blindfolded and sort of throwing arrows, and maybe it'll hit the target or not.
Now, that telephone number that Sally was talking about is 0800 666 555. That's the DHSS free phone, 0800 666 555. And if you forget the number, don't worry about it, because you can always just ask the telephone operator. However, just before we close, here's a checklist of the main changes that we've looked at in this programme. Changes! On April the 11th, supplementary benefit is replaced by income support. Weekly additions and the long-term rate of benefit are replaced by premiums for families, single parents, disabled people and pensioners. Changes! Single payments are replaced by the social fund, with loans that have to be paid back out of benefit, and there will be no right of appeal. Changes! In a new system of housing benefit, you can't claim if your savings are over £6,000. Changes! For low-wage families, family income supplement is replaced by family credit. There will be extra cash, but there will be no more free school meals. And everyone on income support and family credit will have to pay 20% of their rates and all their water rates. So if you'd like more information about the changes that we've looked at in this programme, you could get a copy of our booklet, The Shake-Up, by sending a large stamped self-addressed envelope with a 20p stamp to Advice Shop, Benefit Changes, BBC TV, London W12 8QT. That's Advice Shop, Benefits Changes, BBC TV, London W12 8QT. And don't worry if you didn't get all that down. The address is under our billing in the Radio Times. And in our next Advice Shop, we'll be looking at how various groups such as pensioners and young people, single parents and disabled people, together with their carers, will be affected by the changes. See you then.
And as you can see, the second part of that Advice Shop programme will be at the later time of 11:40 tomorrow evening. Earlier, at 7 o'clock, Terry Wogan's guests include the explorer Sir Ranulph Fiennes and lady snooker star Alison Fisher. Then at 7:35, Selina Scott and Jeff Banks join forces with Eamon Holmes of Open Air